Happy football season, everybody, and welcome into the Graham Lincoln Mac Lane podcast presented by Ingles, the official supermarket of Graham Lincoln Mac Lane. Mac, it's been full speed ahead. We are doing a season preview every dang day. And today we're talking about the Boston College Eagles. So much happened in the offseason. Jeff Hafley leaves. They hire Bill O'Brien. I was excited to talk to Bill O'Brien because this guy has coached some of the greats, Tom Brady. Now he has a new Tommy in town with Castellanos, but he was great. And I'm excited to see what he does. I think this is a job that he's had his eyes on for a very long time, being from Boston, his family's from Boston. Just to be back in that area, I'm very intrigued to see how this works out for BC.
Yeah, and I think his wife is actually a BC grad too, so it runs in the family. It's what we're doing. I am too. It was a little I won't necessarily say fangirl moment, but it was surreal just talking to Coach. Just because, cool. I mean, this is a guy that, you've watched in the NFL and win championships and all these different things. And, to just be talking to him, it's a little different. It was pretty cool. Loved the interview, a lot of fun. And without further ado, let's get to it. Bill O'Brien, Boston College. Let's go.
At Ingles, we know your closest companions are the ones who are always there for you. The ones you trust to have your back, no matter what. Who make the hard times a little softer. And the good ones, somehow, a little better. That's what family is all about. Whether they walk on 2 legs or 4. Ingles, all the ingredients for family.
Coach O'Brien, man, great to see you again. It was fun to spend a little time with each other down in Amelia Island. I know it's summertime, but it's June, and apparently June is the busiest month of the year for college football coaches. So great to see you. How's summer going?
It's great to see you guys. Thank you for having me on. Summer's going well. It is. It's 7 days a week, right? So you have your own team here on campus working out 5-6 times per week and going to class and things like that. And then you have recruiting weekends, official visit weekends every weekend in June. So 4 of those. We just had one last weekend. And then you also have camps. So we have a number of camps, high school camps, prospect camps throughout the month of June. So it's 7 days a week. So we'll take a little time off in July, but for right now, we're grinding through June, just like everybody else in college football.
Well, you guys deserve that time off. And Coach, it's so your path, has been so interesting, spending a lot of time in the NFL, but also a lot of time in college football. How have things changed for you? Since the last time you were head coach to now, it feels like college football is almost a different sport, a college head coach. So what's been the biggest difference for you with this job?
Yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, there's things, it's funny. A lot of people ask me that question. And, obviously when I was at Penn State, there was no name, image, and likeness. But I will
say the good old days, Coach.
The good old days. But I will say this. We had to deal with the portal at Penn State, right? So when the sanctions came out in 2012, the guys that we had at Penn State, they could transfer anywhere they wanted. They could go to another school, and that school could go above 85 scholarships. So we had to do a great job at Penn State at that time of recruiting our own team. So that type of philosophy and the connection that you have to have with players, that's where I really, really, I had known that before, but it really came home for me when we dealt with that at Penn State, and that's a philosophy that really helps us now at Boston College, right? You have to really have a connection with your own players, do a great job of developing and working with your own players both on and off the field to really retain your players. And I think so far we've done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, a moment in time that maybe when you were doing it, hard to understand, weird things, but prepared you for this and prepared you for everything that you're going. So that's a very interesting thing there. Coach, I love the story when you and I were talking briefly, again, as I mentioned, down in Amelia Island, on just why Boston College, why you chose this and, just why this was such an affinity for you.
Yeah, so I grew up around here. I grew up about a half an hour north of here. And when I was growing up, my teenage years was the Doug Flutie years of Boston College, Jack Bicknell and Doug Flutie. So I grew up a huge BC fan. I've always loved BC. And then, as my career went along, I met my wife in 1995 when I was at Georgia Tech. And she's a Boston College grad, 92 grad of Boston College. And, we've always loved Boston College. sometimes in coaching, your career takes you on different paths. When the job opened up in the past, it was never the right time for me to do it, but this was really the right time and the time in my career to do it at a place that I really believe in. I believe that you can, play good football. We have a great degree here, and we do a lot in the community here. And I think that's what BC is all about. And that's what I love. I love coming to work every day. I really enjoy this team that we have right now. I've really enjoyed getting to know and working with. Got a good staff here, so I'm having a good time here at BC.
Coach, when this job came open, did you also think, at least when you did some of your research, of, oh, they've got a quarterback there? Like that's interesting with
Yeah.
Thomas Castellanos, Tommy, as I like to call him.
Yeah.
So walk us through that. I mean, obviously you were staying abreast of what was going on, so you knew who he was, but kind of your first conversations with him and what you've seen from him so far.
Yeah, he's a great kid. He transferred here from Central Florida, and when he came in, I think he was the number 2 last year coming into camp, and then quickly was elevated to be the number 1 quarterback and really took off from there. He's done a really good job with us of buying into what we're doing, really trying to learn our system. He had a really good spring. He's having a great summer so far. Look, he's a dual threat guy, right? He can run. He's an exciting player. I think the big thing for us will be, make good decisions for the team. When it's time to run. When it's time to hang in there and make a good throw, make a good throw. And I think he's getting better and better at that. So we love coaching him, and he adds an electric quality to our team, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I know you've had guys in the past, Coach, that were similar in abilities that can take off and hurt you with their legs, can obviously hurt you with their arm. How do you coach that though? Because it's the like instinct that you don't want to, I guess, scare out or dummy down or anything like that. Because sometimes we try to get X, we want it to look like X, but this guy, man, he's Z, and he can do it really, really well. So where's that balance of I guess figuring that out versus where we want to be, what we do, and allowing a player like that to just have the freedom to be who he is?
Yeah, that's a great point, and we have to be careful that we don't overcoach. When you're a younger coach, you're trying to be very diligent and detailed and how you have to do this and you have to do that. But as you go through your career, and for me, I've coached so many different types of guys at quarterback, right? From Tom Brady to Deshaun Watson to Bryce Young to, now Tommy Castellanos. I mean, you have to, I look at it as guiding him, right? Here's the guide. Here's what the play is designed to do. Here's the defense it's designed to beat. But as defenses have become more multiple, sometimes the percentages say it's a 50-50 deal here. It might be this, it might be that. And when it's something else, you got to let your instincts take over. And we don't want to overcoach Tommy. We never want to take away his ability to make off-schedule plays because that's what makes him such a threat. Even when I was at the ACC meetings with you guys, those coaches down there, they were asking about Tommy. Hey, is that guy coming back for you? So he made an impact on the ACC last year, and we don't want to take away that ability that he has to make those type of plays. So we're being very careful with that.
Well, that's interesting, Coach, because you have coached so many dynamic quarterbacks. Obviously, for us as 2 Clemson grads, we watched a lot of you when you coached Deshaun Watson and the Texans. And obviously the game's changed a lot over the last couple of years. You were at Alabama, you were around some great quarterbacks. What do you think makes a great college quarterback? Like, what are a few things that you'd really like Tommy to have or that he already has that you feel like can excel right away for BC?
I think that what makes a great college quarterback nowadays with all the, a lot of spread offense, I was in pro football for 7 years. And then when I got fired in Houston, Nick Saban hired me at Alabama, and that was a great opportunity for me because college football had changed, and you just learned about how the spread offense had really taken over the game, and the tempo and the almost like a little bit of basketball on grass. The ability to have a point guard at quarterback that can deliver the ball, and I think that's the big thing. The quarterback has to be a really good decision maker. If he decides that, hey, this window's open, I'm going to anticipate this throw and make the good throw. Or, hey, this lane opened up here, or this rush lane opened up, and I can take off for 20 yards. That's what we try to coach. We try to coach good decisions, making good decisions for the team, anticipating by giving them as much information as we can before the snap of the ball, anticipating what might happen. Maybe that helps the guy relative to making those decisions. So that's what we really try to do with Tommy and, our backup, Grayson James, who's a good player too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know the one thing that, quarterbacks love to have is a great offensive line and a great running back. And when I think Boston College, I mean, that's just, they go coincide with each other. It's 1 and 1. And you when I see, Kai Robichaux and the things that he's been able to do, Trayshawn Ward coming in, I expected him to be a ball player, but also that offensive line that you have. I mean, what does it look like from a rotational piece, I guess, or what you hope to have there? Do you like a 1-2 punch? Do you want someone to really stand out and be the bell cow? What's kind of philosophy running wise?
Yeah, we definitely want to, basically use some different backs. We actually have 3 backs. The 2 that you mentioned, Trayshawn Ward and Kai Robichaux, they had really good springs. We have another young guy named Detrell. We call him Day Day Jones. He's from Boston. He had a really good spring too, a younger player that I think can be really good. So we have to do a great job. I do believe in getting a back into rhythm. And, if you have a guy that's hot, a hot back, let's stay with him. But at the end of the day, we have to be able to play those 3 guys in different packages. And I think up front is the key, though. You're right. We really have a strong belief in our offensive line here. I give the previous staff credit. They recruited these guys and they're good. We have Ozzie Trapillo at right tackle. The right guard spot is kind of a little bit up in the air, but they're good players that'll compete. We have Jack Conley there, Kevin Klein. The center will be Drew Kendall. His dad was a great player here. Ozzie's dad was a great player here. The left guard will be Logan Taylor, and then the left tackle is a young player named Jude Bowery, who's an excellent player. So we have a lot of confidence in our offensive line. We also have some backups that we think, younger players that are going to be pretty good. So you're right. There's a great tradition of O-linemen here at BC, and this group seems to be kind of like the next generation of that tradition, which is good to see.
I'm sure BC fans will love to hear that. It feels like whenever Mac and I have a BC player on our podcast, it's an offensive lineman, Christian Mahogany, right. Alec Lindstrom, all these guys.
Yeah.
I know that's going to continue. Coach, what about on the defensive side? You bring in Coach Lewis to run that defense. Tell us more about him and kind of what you're wanting your defense to look like in year 1.
Yeah, when we went out, one of the things I did when I first got the job was try to take my time, but, not take too much time, but to put together the best staff possible. And Tim Lewis came highly recommended by a number of different people that I'm familiar with in the NFL and in college football. He's come in here and done a good job. He runs a pro system, meaning, we can play some 4 down, we can play some 3 down. He's very versatile in his packages. And early on in the spring, the defense kind of struggled. Our offense was a little bit ahead of them, which is not really par for the course, but it was that way for us. And then they started getting better. So by the end of the spring, they had caught up to the offense. In the spring game, the defense did a really good job. So I think Tim's done a good job of connecting with the players, and he's got a really good staff underneath him that are working hard. There's some good players on defense. We got Donovan Ezaraku, who's our defensive end, who's a really good player. Cam Horsley, an inside defensive tackle, really good. Cam Arnold and Bam Crouch at linebacker, KP Price at safety, Amari Jackson and Max Tucker at corner. I mean, we've got some guys that can play. And then there's some other guys I didn't even mention that I think that can really help us. And so, I feel good about where we are on defense right now. We've got to have a good summer, good training camp, stay healthy. Health will be a key, just like it is for most teams. And we'll keep going here, but I do feel good about the defense.
Yeah. Coach, you touched on it a little bit there with the hiring of Tim Lewis and, wanting to take your time, but knowing you don't really quite have that luxury because of just the calendar year and how these things move. But assembling this staff, I mean, what was that like? Because obviously you've been in the game. You've been around a lot of great people. I'm sure resources you can call on, people you can call on. But doing it here, doing it at Boston College and in the pace that maybe you had to or didn't have to, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, that's something like for me, having the experience that I had, this will be my 3rd head coaching job. And so I think when you get your first one, you try to rush it. You think it's so important to get those 9 or 10 coaches like right away. You got to have them within 2 days, right? Well, and I did that at Penn State. And I think as time went on, I went to Houston, and my first staff at Houston was really good. We had Romeo Cornell, we had Mike Vrabel, we had some really top coaches on that staff. And so what I've learned over time is to take your time. Like, don't take too much time, but make sure that you put together a really good staff that fits where you're at, right? So we had some guys that were on Jeff Hafley's staff, like Darryl Wyatt, Matt Applebaum, Savon Huggins, Matt Turn, who we kept. Jeff went to the Green Bay Packers. It's not like Jeff got fired. He went to
I
the
was
Green
going to
Bay
point that
Packers.
out. That's a great point that people need to remember.
And so there were some really good coaches on that staff who I interviewed, and I felt like those 4 guys, and they've done a good job, since the time we've hired, kept them. And then we hired some other guys. I brought Will Lawing with me, who's been with me for a long time, 13 years, Penn State, Houston, Alabama, New England Patriots, and now here at BC. Brought, some other guys, that Danny O'Brien, the linebacker coach, Tom O'Brien's son, Ray Brown, the secondary coach, really a top secondary coach. So, and then I brought guys like Doug Marrone on board as a, what they call an analyst who helps me in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Bears Najarian is their chief of staff. So I think we have a really strong staff, and I think that's a big deal for us, moving forward. And I think that we have to sell that in recruiting, because I think, we have a staff that can develop players in a good way.
Yeah. One more guy I did want to ask about, Coach, before you move on to the schedule here with KG. Coach Fitzgerald, your strength coach, and taking him from Florida, and bringing him up here, and everything that I've heard about him, just your relationship and how that got done, and I guess what that position, does for a football team.
So, yeah, Coach Fitz, I'm glad you asked me that, because, he's probably the first guy that I should mention. When I went to Penn State, Fitzy and I had worked together at the University of Maryland for Ralph Friedgen. He was like the second in command in a weight room at Maryland. And we're close in age, and we became very close. Our wives are close. And so when I went to Penn State, I said, this is the guy. I have to have this guy. And Fitzy was instrumental in keeping Penn State together. It was us working together with the players that were there at that time. And then we went to Houston together, and then we kind of went our separate ways a little bit. And now we're back at BC together. And to be able to get him from Florida, for our administration to make that commitment to bring a guy in like Fitzy, because, you're going to have to, make the salary commensurate to what it was at Florida. That's a big deal for BC to do that. And it's been awesome to have Fitzy here. He's a massive part. This, Eric, strength coaches, they can be around these kids 365 days a year. So
exactly.
That's the deal. That position in college football is so much more important than it is in pro football, in my opinion. I mean, it's just so important. And so
I completely agree.
In having him has been a huge thing so far. It's been great.
Yeah, great point and great insight, because I think maybe your average fan doesn't really know that.
Yeah.
Coach, when you took this job, I don't know, I don't think the schedule was out yet necessarily. Maybe you had some inside info, but you opened with Florida State. You opened with ACC champs, a team that should have been in the playoff. Mac and I have said that many times.
Yeah.
What do you know about FSU? What do you think about that kind of challenge right away to start the year?
Yeah, well, absolutely. They should have been in the playoff. I mean, they won every game that they played. And they just had a great football team. And Mike Norvell's done an unbelievable job there. If you think about what he's done and what he's built there and the time that he's been there, I just have a lot of respect for Mike. But yeah, no, you can look at it positively or negatively. You can say, look, we're going to play Florida State, or you look at it in a positive way, and it does create a really strong focus in your off-season program, right? These kids are very focused on, getting better, being in great condition, getting stronger, learning our systems, because they want to go out there and play well. That's the only college game, I think, on that night, Labor Day night, Monday night. And so it's a big deal. And that's why these kids came to BC to play in games like this. And look, it's not going to be easy. Everybody understands that. It's Florida State. They got a great program, but I do think it adds a strong focus to what you're doing in the off season, which is good.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and I just like that, just the sense of urgency in camp.
Yeah.
We're not easing into this. We're sprinting into it, and we all got to be ready. We all got to be ready.
Right.
Last one for you, Coach, and you are. We're asking every coach this, but you're probably the most prepared of all these guys because of the NFL ties. There's going to be some new technology in college football with the iPads and video, which I know that element is new, but also the coach to player helmet communication there. What do you like about it? What do you love about it? And maybe just how will that change, your approach on a game day and different meetings or things you have on the sideline?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I mean, I think it's a long time. It's overdue. I think that, the ability to communicate with a quarterback or a middle linebacker or whoever you decide is your signal caller on defense is big. I mean, it just help. I believe, Eric, that it's going to help the rhythm of the game. right?
For sure.
Where, in the past, because you couldn't do that, sometimes look over to the sideline, and, there was not a great rhythm sometimes to some of these games. I think it'll help the way that the game, rolls along. I think that's a big thing. And, our guys, we have to get used to using it, especially on defense. Offensively, we've been using it for a long time, in the pros. And then I think the sideline, using the iPads on the sideline is another one that's long overdue because, we have all this technology and we want the game to be played well. We want the fans to see a really good product. And having that and being able to make an adjustment, an in-game adjustment, because you have that technology, that's a big deal. Now, again, you have to do a good job with it, and you can't overthink it. If you use it and you say, okay, well, here are the 50 different things they did on that play. Well, your players are going to be paralyzed. So you got to be careful about overdoing the iPad stuff, but it's definitely something that'll help if you use it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, that in itself is going to be a fascinating strategy just because how do guys utilize it? Because like you said, I mean, there's paralysis by analysis. If you're hitting me with way too many things and I'm already thinking about who knows what else, and now I'm getting hit with a real life grill session of why I missed my assignment here. It is going to be fascinating. To go back to the communication really quickly, because you do have so much experience with this. Are you going to be the guy talking? Are you calling plays and talking with the quarterback?
I think as we go right now, it'll be Will Lawing. I think Will Lawing will give the play to the quarterback relative to who calls the play and all that. We'll see how that goes. I think what happens in my role, one thing I've learned over the years is that, you can't really do everything. Let's do something that you're good at. And I'm good at running the team and coaching all three phases. When we were in practice in the spring, Will gave the play to the quarterbacks, and that worked really well. Why are we going to disrupt that when we get to the season? Let's not disrupt that. He'll give the play to the quarterback. I think that's a good. I don't want to disrupt that. I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and I guess what I was trying to find out or get at is what's the strategy there, and is it? I'm sure it is dependent on who the quarterback is, but like you can overload that guy too, right? Is less more in that role, or what do you find to be successful with that comms?
Yeah, I think that's important. That's a great question. I think that's something, and I'll never forget this. When I first started doing this, obviously I was doing it for Tom Brady, and I can remember Tom saying to me like, "Hey, don't give me too much information. Just give me something that's really important, something that can help me." So most times you're just giving the play, right? You're not giving everything that could possibly happen on that play. Then, you're just not going to be able to do that. But there are times where, as the clock's winding down, and this is a situation where, hey, they bring the weak safety, or, you're getting this field pressure, or, just be ready for this front or this coverage. You can give them something before 15 seconds on the clock goes. You can give them some information that you have to be very positive that it's going to happen, or a high percentage that it's going to happen. You can use your communication ability to help the quarterback, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, maybe you could help us get that little rookie, announcer over at Fox on this pod. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Casual Tom Brady drop. I love it.
Yeah, that'll be stories for another time. Coach, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time, man, and we're jacked up to see it. Can't wait to see what you guys do at Boston College.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thanks to Bill O'Brien for joining us here on the podcast. And let's talk about BC a little more, Mac. They go 7-6 last year, 3-5 in the ACC. I mean, when you think, you and I were talking about this off air. Think back to Boston College's season last year. They start the year with that loss to Northern Illinois. They almost lose to Holy Cross. And you're thinking, there's no way this team makes a bowl. They end up making a bowl game almost easily, going 7-5. And sorry, 6-6. And then they beat SMU, of course, in the bowl game. And they have that crazy tear. They go on winning 5 straight. So this was one of the weirdest seasons ever, I think, for Boston College. And one thing, too, that we have to remember is Jeff Hafley was not fired. Like, this program is not in disarray. I mean, Bill O'Brien takes over a bowl program, and now what can he do? And the biggest thing that he has to work with is Thomas Castellanos, who he's a unique talent. There really isn't anyone else in college football like him. And I'm really excited to see what Bill O'Brien does with him.
Yeah, and it was fascinating. I agree with all that. It was fascinating to kind of ask Coach O'Brien just about when you have a guy like that, you can't put them in a box, and you can't
Right.
just hammer saying, no, this is how we do it. Like, you got to let them create a little bit and kind of live and die by the creativity, escapability, and kind of the magic that he can make happen. Now, you want to tune it down, and you want to make sure the ball's never put in jeopardy within the system and do things of that nature. But his ability to create is second to none in the ACC, and people were getting real excited, myself included, when they were on that heater and saying, could this guy end up being like the player of the year? I mean, they're just going nuts. And then,
when
of
you
course,
talk value to your team, there wasn't really anyone more valuable than Castellanos to his team.
Yeah, he turned it all around. So excited to see him in year 2 as a starter. The growth that we'll see there, and just the ownership of the offense we saw in the spring game. Boston College has another young quarterback that they feel really good about. And, is that the future? What does it look like moving forward, for kind of everybody involved? I also like Trayshawn Ward coming back to the ACC, coming to Boston College. We saw what he was able to do at FSU, was a really talented guy. And, I think that's something that's going to be undervalued as well, KG, when you have some dynamic players like that in your backfield, including your quarterback, and a solid offensive line. I think the offensive line is going to be much better. All those guys now that they've been together for a handful of seasons now, and it's their turn to kind of be the stars of the show.
You pair him with Robichaux, and you've got quite a ground game. Now, can they make a little more happen through the air? Defense, I've got some questions there. I mean, we interviewed Coach O'Brien in June, so he had almost just taken over. Like, I'm not sure how much he even knew. So I think BC is a team that I'm not quite sure about, because Bill O'Brien is so fresh. Like, this was such a weird situation when Jeff Hafley left, but I don't think it's going to take that much time to figure out what's going on, because you do have Castellanos. And I know that was, I imagine, part of the reason why Bill O'Brien was interested in this job, because A, it's not a rebuild, and B, you inherit a guy like Castellanos right off the bat. When you look at this schedule, Mac, oh gosh, I have 2023 pulled up. I was going to say Northern Illinois, but no, you avoid Northern Illinois. That's
Thank
good.
God.
However, you open with Florida State. Now, that is really an interesting game here. Yeah, but Florida State they will have just gone to Ireland. They will have just played Georgia Tech, come back. Now you're on the road Monday night. So you have, you're sitting around watching everybody else play, waiting to get going. And then you have FSU. So we'll learn a lot there. Like, that's Bill O'Brien's first game at BC right off the bat at Florida State down there in Tallahassee.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll be at that game live. Cannot wait. Cannot wait to see that. Kind of the exclamation point of that Labor Day weekend. And yeah, I mean, get going in a hurry. You've got Florida State. Then you've got kind of a break game in the middle there. Then you're at Missouri, a team that everybody thinks is winning the East, is going to be in the playoff. A team that's really, really good. And then, of course, a Michigan State team before you jump straight into ACC play.
It is a little odd.
It's not great. It's not great. But
tough.
you do with what you can, and you make it happen. So going to be an interesting year for sure. Great to have Coach O'Brien, in the ACC and back being a head coach, and, excited to see how he continues to build, because an offensive mastermind, I mean, a genius. And how can you use the pieces of this puzzle, that you have to get it going in the right direction?
I'll say this, Mac. I'm not sure Florida State, they're going over to Ireland. They have Georgia Tech. They probably feel good about that. I'm not sure they love the fact of their first game back being BC. Well, first of all, I think about last year, BC probably should have won that game up in Chestnut Hill, but just having to deal with Castellanos. Like, when you come back, you got to deal with the layover and getting all that. And then Castellanos comes to town. And that's the beauty of who Tommy Castellanos is. He's a guy that defensive coordinators do not want to have to prepare for.
Right.
And that's what Bill O'Brien has at his disposal. So I'm really intrigued to see how it looks.
And there is a bit of a silver lining, because obviously Florida State would have just played Haynes King, so that they've got a relative mobile guy, not quite as mobile, but a guy that'll take off and hurt you. So I know this isn't Florida State's episode, but they've got that, kind of back to back. So it's going to be interesting. Great start, hot start, potential legendary start for Boston College if they make some stuff happen. And
you're the only game
here.
on, like, heck of a way to break open your season. Yeah.
Exactly. Go make it happen. So that's it from us. Big shout out to our folks over at Boston College. Big shout out to Coach O'Brien and for his time. Very grateful and excited to see this new, kind of era with him leading the way there. We need you guys to go over to YouTube, subscribe, leave some comments, jump on this train with us. And of course, the OGs over on Apple Podcasts, rate, review, subscribe there as well. We would greatly appreciate that. But until next time, we'll see y'all.